However, when you have Ham that had Cush and Cush that had Nimrod, let me say it this way. Study it out. All false religion started under Nimrod and his wife Semiramis. All of the false religions started under these two individuals. And you can trace it down. There's been books that's been written about ancient Babylon that will tell you. So now there's been a gap, okay? Suddenly they pick up the seed again, and this lineage of Nimrod becomes a great rebel. He's very negative. The history of him is extremely negative. So now the earth has been scattered and the nations have been divided. Now all of a sudden there is a break again, and we find that there is a lineage pickup through Abraham meeting Melchizedek. So the seed of Shem now comes from Eber, and Eber begins to start the Hebrew people, and Abraham now begins to continue a righteous seed here through what was going to be called the nation of Israel. Now all of a sudden we get Abraham going. Everybody say Abraham. Well, we get two different seeds now that start coming out of Abraham. Well, we have the seed of Abraham having two sons, Ishmael and Isaac. Ishmael, the daddy of the Arab nations, Isaac, the daddy of the Jewish people. And then we have a son by the name of Jacob that comes. When Jacob comes, we discover that we have Jacob and we have Esau. We have another set of two sons that come. Jacob forming the race of the Jews again, keeping the Jewish lineage going. Esau keeping the Palestinian tribes going. The Canaanites, the Hivites, the Moabites. All those tribes you read about come through Esau. Then you have Judah going into Tamar. As he goes into Tamar, you have Pharez and Zered being born through Judah. Again, two separate sons. Now here's what begins to happen. I want everybody to follow me carefully. Let's first look at Ishmael. Ishmael is the daddy of most of those people living in Arabia. Let's just say the oil states. A lot of the oil states in the Arabian Gulf are the sons of Ishmael. Now, let me tell you about the sons of Ishmael. Listen to this prophecy in Genesis 16 and 12. He will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of all of his brethren. The word wild man in Hebrew means a wild donkey. Now, when you say this word in contemporary terms, people don't like you to use it, although it's all over the King James Bible. So for everybody that has a 1611, here's the translation. He's a wild ass. He's a wild donkey. He's a wild ass of a man. That's what it means. I come across a wild donkey one time in Israel. I had a cameraman named Wayne Kilpatrick. What was that guy trip, man? He was hilarious. He stuttered. He stuttered all the time, and he get excited. He really stuttered. He could sing and never stutter. But just like, what's that guy, Mel Tillis? But I'm telling you, when he got nervous, I'm not making fun of him. He's a dear friend. We have laughed with him over and over again. So he's out there filming a wild donkey, and I want you to know that wild donkey went nuts on him. That's all I'm going to say. A wild donkey, you can't tame it. A wild donkey is crazy. A wild donkey, you can get on and he'll throw you off, or he'll kick you, from the backside. Now, here's the thing I want to tell you. Here's what's interesting. Ooh, listen to this. The Middle East people who are Arabs are about 95 to 98% Muslim. Now, here's the thing that people do not understand. How can Muslims kill each other? How in Iraq, how come the Sunnis are killing the Shia and the Shias are killing the Sunni? How come Arafat's party, the Fatah party, and the Hamas are shooting each other? Let me tell you something. If you give a son of Ishmael a gun, he's going to shoot somebody. And these guys are nuts. At Arafat's funeral, they had these machine guns, and bullets are falling down, hitting people on the head, knocking them out, and killing folks. There were people that they were shooting these guns, and this is a true story. I had a friend of mine that was there. He said, they're shooting guns, and people are dropping, and the ambulance is picking them up. They're shooting a gun up in it. Where's a bullet going to go? It's not going to go in outer space. It's going to come down on somebody's head. You give them a gun, they're going to shoot somebody. You give them a bomb, they're going to blow somebody up. And you know what? Can I tell you this? You ready? Here's the big revelation. It's in their DNA. Now, it was God that said, you're going to be a wild ass. And Every man's hand is going to work against you, and you're going to work against every man. They not only can get mad, and I'm talking about specifically from the Muslim side, because Arab Christians basically are peacekeeping people. They want peace. You don't see them getting in all these fights. They try to avoid them. But from the Islamic side, you go over in the Middle East, man, I mean, these guys, these two Muslim businessmen will get in a fight and almost kill each other. It's in their DNA. And come on, preach on. I'm going to, hallelujah. And that's the son of Ishmael. Now here's Esau. You know that Esau hated Jacob. Isaac, his father, answered and said to him, behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth and the dew of heaven above. And watch this prophecy from Papa. By thy sword you shall live and serve your brother. And it shall come to pass when you shall have dominion that you shall break his yoke off your neck. Now here it says fatness. Fatness means the richness of the earth, and it comes from a root Hebrew word that means oil. Hey, guess who's got the oil? The sons of Esau and the sons of Ishmael. I had a guy tell me the other day that just got back from the Kurdish Iraq. He said, Perry, did you know that in Jordan, where many of the Palestinians are who trace their descendancy through Esau, Jordan hit oil, and they hit it lower than Arabia. In other words, it's lower than Saudi. And Saudi got afraid that the oil in Saudi was going to run into those lines underground into Jordan, and they paid Jordan $1 billion a year not to drill oil. The Arabs right now are terrified that Israel will find oil somewhere, but if Israel found oil, it would have to be lower than Arabia because it'd have to be deeper. They've already done some drilling and found a little bit of evidence, but nothing, no big breakthrough. And they're terrified because then the oil of Arabia, they're afraid, would shift over into Israel. You see what I'm saying? But Israel at this point doesn't have oil. They've had a few wells that produced a little bit, but they dried out and they had to shut them up. So, you'll dwell in the fatness of the earth. Then it talks about the dew from heaven above. The dew is a literal, but it also deals with living outdoors in tents. Just like Ishmael, watch this, you will have a sword. Now, once again, if you don't get me wrong, but you see it on the news consistently where the sons of Ishmael are fighting each other all the time. They don't get along with each other. It's the strangest thing. Now, when it comes to hating Israel, they all agree. When it comes to getting along with each other, they don't agree. Now we have Esau in this lineage, which would include some of Israel and predominantly would include the country of Jordan. What does the Bible say about them? They too will dwell with the sword. Now, in other words, they're going to be fighters. Look at the Palestinian people. Boy, you give them a sword, they'd use it. They don't have swords, so they throw rocks. And again, we see this conflict. Come on, is anybody with me this morning? We see this conflict going on. Now, here's what's interesting. Watch this. This is what they're trying to do now. The Palestinian people of Arab descent are trying to do this now. When you grow restless, you will break the yoke of your brother off your neck. That's a prophecy. Palestinian state. They want a Palestinian state. Now, it almost implies here, you're going to get restless. And they are definitely restless in Israel. The descendants of Esau, the Palestinians, are totally restless. And they're constantly trying to break what we would say the yoke of Israeli occupation off of their neck. And that's why they keep talking a state, because this prophecy implies that there would come a time that they would be independent. They would be able to stand on their own for a period of time. And I don't want to get into all that because there are prophecies in the book of Ezekiel that indicate that there would be a struggle over the land, etc. Now, Ishmael are the Arabic-speaking people and the Arabs of the Middle East. Esau is Edom. He is predominantly connected to the Palestinian people living in and around Israel. Ishmael had 12 princes come out of him, and Esau had 2 sons with numerous sons that came out of him. For Esau to break the yoke, and for Ishmael to rise in the end days, the following had to occur. For Esau, number one, the Jews have to have the land of Israel and be in conflict with them. I'm talking about for the prophecy to be fulfilled. Number two, the Jews have to rule over them and they have to become restless. Number three, Esau has to raise up and break the yoke off of their neck. And this is the Palestinian issue. This is what they're trying to do with the Oslo Accords and the agreements. For Ishmael, the Arabs had to have a series of independent nations surrounding Israel. From 1517 to 1917, they were under Turkish rule, and the Turks were mostly nomads living in the desert. After World War I, Britain and the U.S. began to set up Arabian oil. Prince Saud, who was a friend of America in the 1920s, allowed America to come. They dug 7 wells in Arabia and found nothing. They tried one more well. Guess what happened? They struck oil. Check this out. The U.S. gained rights to Saudi oil with $900,000 in gold and began to look over and take care of 120,000 square miles in Arabia for over 60 years. Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran, Kuwait, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, Qatar. There's about 8 states that are rich in oil. By the way, according to information I received, the United States had access to oversee this oil since the 1920s, and the access ran out in 2006. In other words, and I'm not saying that they haven't renewed contracts, because I don't know how this works, but I'm saying the document I read that told was about American history said that it was to go up to a certain period of time. And so, interesting, isn't it? Chavez in Venezuela, you know, Pat Robertson got on TV and talked about what an evil man this was, and, you know, America better watch him, and it might be even good to consider the CIA taking him out. And the press jumped all over Pat. Oh, what a fanatic, what a nut, this man's insane, blah, blah, blah. Now the whole U.S. government realized Pat was right. Chavez, you know what he did? He called all the oil companies in and made them sign the rights of everything over to him. He's a dictator. And talks about the destruction of America, gets up at the UN and says Bush is a devil. What kind of man is that? Trying to build his military. By the way, he's connected to Al-Qaeda. He's letting Al-Qaeda agents into his nation. Okay, so sometimes men that seem to speak out and be bold on what they say are not as crazy as some people think they are, because they see into the future and they're not just looking at the present. Somebody shout yes if you understand. Let me go through this very quickly. We keep following Ishmael and Esau, and let's go all the way up. Let's skip through time, the Babylonian captivity, on and on and on. Let's go all the way to the New Testament. Jesus had 12 disciples. 12 men. One was Judas Iscariot. Matthew 10 and 4. Judas is the Greek form of the Hebrew Judah. Most people don't know that. Judah. Now, Iscariot is a small town located in the tribe of Judah, according to Joshua chapter 15, verse 25. Verse 25. Ishkara means strangulation. Lightfoot said the name was given to him after Judas hung himself. The death of Judas. He was called by Jesus the son of perdition in John 17 and 12. And the Bible says he went to his own place at his death, Acts 1:25, which would have been hell. Now check this out. Just like John wrote about the Antichrist and talked about Cain of that wicked one, the Antichrist is called son of perdition in 2 Thessalonians 2 and 3. Judas was called the son of perdition. The Antichrist is called the son of perdition. There is a great scholar, I've studied after him, a Greek scholar by the name of Kenneth Wuest. Now, the only area I've ever disagreed on anything I've ever read by Wuest is who he believes the Antichrist is. Because Kenneth Wuest has a teaching where he suggests that because Judas is called the son of perdition and so is the Antichrist, that Judas went to a special place in hell, that he believed that Judas, that deadly wound that was healed, The Antichrist has a wound of death, but he comes back healed. That Judas is going to be pulled out of the pit, out of the place where he is, and going to come back and going to serve as the Antichrist. Now that's a very, now again, he's got his little points and his little evidence for it, but I personally could not agree with that because the spirit of Judas has been out of the body. The body is already deteriorated. That would have to be that Judas would have to come back with a spirit body of some kind that couldn't even be killed. Because how many of you know once you leave your body, your spirit's eternal? You can't stab it, you can't, you can burn it, but it ain't going to burn up or anything like that. And so it would take a resurrection of Judas and another death of Judas after 1900 years. But I'm not sure about that at all.